You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating talk radio. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Doctor, tell me true. What's a heart like mine supposed to do? Doctor.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So again, not only am I here to give you the news, but I am also here to kind of clarify some things, because I know there's been a lot of confusion. And for those of you watching me on the Facebook Live, I forgot to switch back my sign, so my sign is a little bit backwards. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I know it's backwards. I did that on purpose because of a different video I had to do, so I'm good. But with the Cyclospora and the cyclosporiasis cases, if you notice, the numbers have not been reportedly rising to the degree that they did. We're still roughly at the 7,000 number, which has been going on now for the last few days. That's been the number they've been at in terms of the number of cases. However, I am hearing more and more people still complain of watery diarrhea, abdominal pain, bloating, and with possible ties to what they ate. And the cyclospora parasite is a parasite that we are fortunately able to treat with antibiotics, the sulfa antibiotics, because it affects their folic acid metabolism. Very, very cool mechanism by where an antibiotic can attack a parasite. But the drama that has ensued is the DNA result, or the lab test that had suggested that Taylor Farms, who supplies lettuce to Yum brands, including Taco Bell, that originally they thought tested positive for Cyclospora, was a false negative result. And this false negative result has been reported all over the internet. But the FDA still feels that Taylor Farms could be the culprit. And some of you are like, well, how is that happening? That makes no sense. Here's why. Okay. So whenever somebody, let's say, gets sick and we get a cluster of cases, we find out where the common denominator was. What did you eat? Where did you eat? You know, and mind you, since everybody eats fast food, I mean, there's so many different possibilities, which is why when they brought up Taco Bell about a week and a half ago, we were very kind of slow to say it's been confirmed, because it wasn't necessarily confirmed. It was it was being investigated as a possible link. If multiple people who get sick say they possibly got sick from that restaurant, you could test after the fact and you could see, because you don't want future cases. But if somebody got sick, and remember, the incubation period could be up to a couple weeks. If somebody got sick from eating something a couple weeks ago, the companies such as Taco Bell said, look, just to be safe, we're going to voluntarily recall our lettuce. If the access to what was actually used or done a week or two prior comes up negative, it doesn't necessarily rule out that whole entire vein of possible exposure. So a false positive test is where I find the concern. False negative happens, understandably, where, all right, well, you sample something, and then it's if you sample the wrong part, it could be falsely negative. So, like, for example, an example of false negative is you have strep throat, but the person swabbing you is inexperienced, and they're on their phone, or they're doing it half-ass, and they swab a part that just doesn't have the strep. They go, oh, you're negative. You don't have strep. And it's a false negative because you actually had it, or the test didn't pick it up. A false positive is a little different. A false positive actually has to turn positive. Okay, it's a lot harder for a test to turn positive than to be negative, because they're negative by default. So to have something positive and then go, wait, it's a false positive. And in the sciences, you're like, well, why? What happened? Is the test broken? Is the test malfunctioning? Is there something else that's triggering the test to be positive? I think years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were pregnant women testing positive for syphilis who didn't really have syphilis, because one of the testing mechanisms had it would trigger a positive test, but then you do the backup, the FDA test, and the confirmatory test, or the reflex confirmatory test, which showed they didn't have syphilis. But there's been some tests where something could make you positive, like in Seinfeld, they were talking about poppy seeds making a narcotic drug test positive. It's really hard in this day and age, but there was an argument that if you took in poppy seeds, that could trigger a positive drug test for opium. So a positive test, a false positive, is where you test positive, but you don't have the illness. There's no reason why you should be testing positive. And then they go, oops, you're actually negative. So it's a negative person testing positive, or a negative sample. One false positive doesn't necessarily mean the whole batch is clean. So what the FDA is saying is if we have many people tied to, in this cluster, and mind you, Cyclospora cases, there's been every year we have little outbreaks. It's just this year, up to 7,000 presumed cases. That's a lot. So it is a bigger deal this year. But, Cyclospora is nothing new. And especially during the summer season when people are eating vegetables and fruits and things like that, it happens. But they need to be right on the money with this. And one of the reasons why is now somebody is suing Taylor Farms and Taco Bell. So we're being told that if I could find the case here, and I apologize if I can't, but I'm being told that there's a lawsuit right now against Taylor Farms and Taco Bell because of the Cyclospora. If I find that for the next segment, I'll tell you about that. But the fact that there's already this, once you have these, once you start getting these outbreaks of these cases, out come the lawyers. And so now that they want to sue, it's like, okay, well, there's got to be the proof. Now, epidemiologically, you don't necessarily have to have the positive test. If, 2,000 people ate from a similar type of restaurant, and that's the common denominator, you can suspect that. But, in terms of logistically, it might not hold that much water in the court. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. Big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. Yeah, I'll fix the sign. I forgot about that. I'll fix the sign. Thank you. I am very, very frustrated with what's going on with our college students. Our college students are being so burdened with debt before they even move out of their parents' house. And we need to take a step back and go, okay, what is exactly happening? Why is that? We're being told that millions of students are now in default and millions have student loan debt of over $200,000. Are they all in medical school? Are they all in law school? No. Some of these are degrees in architecture and nursing and pre-dentistry and pre-med and the $200K. $200,000. Now, somebody could say, yeah, but Dr. Dahlia, they might be going to Harvard. No, not all of these students are in Harvard. In fact, there's a study looking at the states where the majority of these students, go to school. Of course, California, because California has some of the most expensive colleges out there. Also, I believe Florida, Texas. I apologize. My computer really does not want to give me my reports. And there was a couple other states, I think New York, where the colleges are at the most expensive and or the student loan debt is at its highest. So we're looking at, I apologize for this. I apologize. See, now we got the Taco Bell stuff back up. Don't ask. Okay. I'm supposed to be looking at my, but it's not showing me. But New York, Texas, Florida, California, top the list of states where students have the most student loan debt. Now, the question that a lot of people are asking is who's, counseling them? Who is protecting them, talking to them about safeguards? Well, the only people talking to these students are usually the colleges themselves. And the colleges have everything to gain from getting the money. And then you look at this number, 200,000. Gosh, that's a lot of money. Why 200,000? Why not 150,000? Why not? So according to the Institute of College Access and Success, the lifetime loan limit for all borrowers is $257,500. Now, even though unsubsidized loans and subsidized loans, there's some caps but they say the lifetime loan limit, according to the Institute for College Access and Success, is $257,500, which means somebody is looking at the limit and going, okay, let's go for it. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. When I was in school, I remember in undergrad, they kept pushing, borrow money, so you don't have to work. And I'm like, I don't want to be in debt. No. I'm going to wait table. I'm going to do what I have to do. Well, in undergrad, I wasn't 21, so you couldn't wait tables until you were 21. And I was 21, I think, my last year. So I had to work at Jack in the Box and tutor and do secretary jobs, which I loved. But I did about 3 part-time jobs on average just to kind of make my ends meet. In medical school, I was already over 21, then I could wait tables while in medical school. So I didn't have to borrow more. Now I borrowed, I think, about anywhere from 80 to 88 grand in medical school. And I remember the loan companies and the colleges, you could borrow more. You got a wedding coming up, borrow more. And I'm like, but I don't want to be in debt. Well, during the Democratic primary of 2016, and then during the 2020 campaign, there was a lot of push for, well, let's write off the student loan debt. Let's just write it off. And what they found was that was very, very unpopular, especially with the Democrats. Those that paid off their student loan debt, that went to school, paid it off, or avoided going to school, avoided going into debt, and then ending up, doing a trade or something else, which I think was lucrative and but for those who didn't borrow, they're kind of like, wait a second, now you want me to pay some other snot-nosed little kid's loans? So there was a reprieve. It got a little quiet about that because they found that it wasn't that popular. But the topic's going to come back because as we're coming into another election, whether it's the midterms or others, there's an audience, there's a demographic of individuals who, while you see the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, say free rent, free childcare, free health care, they're also talking about student loan debt. So now there's going to be another push for us taking on other student loan debt. And the solution is simple. Have the colleges buy it down. Have the colleges. They're the ones that got the money. Why do they get to raise their rates, rake in all this money, and then you and I have to pay for everybody else's student loan debt? Now, somebody could say, but Dr. Dahlia, college is very expensive. You know, these colleges need to charge somebody $200,000. I don't understand why our poor nurses are going $200,000 in debt. Who's charging them $200,000 for their nursing degree? That's unfair, and that's got to get limited. That's not cool. Medical school. I know students who told me they were almost $500,000 in debt, and I'm like, really? And I see some of the quality of your education. Really? It's because you got a captive audience. They're screwed if they don't. They think that they're going to pay it off as soon as they graduate, and most doctors can, but not every nurse, not every teacher. And I see what's happening on college campuses now. Many of the professors still aren't in person. These are remote classes. These are online classes. I've had family members and friends' kids, you know, when I go, oh, wow, when do you go back to college? They go, I go to my room and turn on my computer. And I go, but COVID's been done for years. I mean, COVID, the COVID lockdown, all that, they're still doing that. So you're paying $200,000 for a degree that you're doing online? Come on. Now, I get it. The science is you have labs. You go into the lab and that, but you're not seeing the benefits. Prove to me why it costs $200,000. Well, you used to be able to convince students that was worth it because you said, look, but if you get a college degree in women's studies, in environmental studies, in architecture, in math, a biology degree, you're going to then live the American dream because you're going to get a job. I'm telling you right now, a degree in bio, a bachelor's in bio, you're not going to be able to afford a house on that. You're going to have to maybe get a master's or PhD to teach it or use it to get into medical school or nursing school. But, a degree, a bachelor's degree in biology or women's studies or environmental, it's not enough now to, give somebody that guaranteed, suit salary. So what's happening with colleges? Well, students are like, attack with this. If I'm not going to get the job, why be in debt? Now, the DSA is going to try to capitalize on that, say, well, we'll write it off. We'll write it off. And I already hear people, especially Democrats, start to groan going, okay, that's going to become painful because it's a lot of money. And our, constituents that paid off their own student loan debt are not going to be happy. So what I recommend we do is have the colleges, if they want to still have those high borrower limits, and they are advocating for writing off student loan debt, they put the money in. Or they write off some of that debt. It really should be the colleges. They could do it. Now, the college campuses are a little nervous because now that students are ticked off that they're still doing remote and they're not going out to campus, colleges are paying widespread acreage. Well, maybe what they need to do is start to downsize or rent out their facilities, rent out their buildings. But at some point, unless, of course, you're Ivy League, the average college is not going to convince a student to pay that kind of money for their degree because the degree doesn't guarantee the job. And I'm frustrated that they keep raising the loan limits, the max you could borrow, and then the colleges raise the rate. So if you lower the loan limits, which is, I think, what Congress wants to do, or they say, look, A student can maximally borrow 100,000. If it's for medical school, they can borrow a little more. For law school, they can borrow a little more. But these colleges are not going to get more than $100,000 for an architecture degree or a nursing degree or that. And will that make the colleges lower their rates? I think it will. Now, I want anybody who wants to become whoever they want to be able to, borrow. But at some point, if you're limited on how much you can borrow to buy a house, if you're limited on what you can borrow for a car, why aren't we also, protecting our students from being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? So 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So my biggest pet peeve is waste. Maybe it's because I grew up with grandparents who, survived the Holocaust and, the Depression and things like that. But if I see my kids leave food on their plate, I go, save it for me. I'll eat it tomorrow. We're not going to throw away food. We don't waste stuff. When I hear that $99 million, just a tip of the iceberg of what they found in federal payments, were being dispersed to deceased individuals that the Department of Treasury found, that just drives me crazy. When I hear of the waste, fraud, the abuse, it kills me. Because here we are looking at what you're going to be talking about later. Should all kids, some of the Democratic legislators want kids to get automatic health care, which I think could be positive, could be popular bipartisanly. But, there's all this spending that the government wants to do and may need to do because of the rising demand on Social Security and Medicare, et cetera. But if we're not stopping the leaky faucet of the fraud, we're going to be in trouble. So the Department of Treasury, we found, has now stopped at least $99 million to start in federal payments that were going to dead people because they came up with a new verification system that apparently was not embraced by the Biden administration. Biden allowed the checks and balances to just go away. And we're being told that now the Trump administration is revamping them. There's an executive order 14249 protecting America's bank account against fraud, waste, and abuse. And so the Department of Treasury and Bureau of Fiscal Service implemented a verification process that reviewed more than 885 million payments, totaling approximately $2.77 trillion, according to Fox News. That screening flagged more than 5,000 payments, totaling nearly 100 million, that were actually going to dead people. They returned these payments to the original federal agencies for review before any funds were dispersed. So Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, said, so far we've saved 100 million payments that didn't go to deceased people. We think that there's up to 350 million that we could stop before the end of this year. The Government Accountability Office estimates that the number may be up to 500 billion or 1.66% of GDP. So that could go a long way towards paying down the debt, providing more services, and this is just the start. He says in the Biden administration, HHS got rid of about 50 or 60 of the people who were charged with monitoring fraud. And he was telling Maria Bartiromo, What's important here is we are stopping the money from going out. So once the money gets out, trying to retrieve it, it's very, very difficult. So stopping it at the source here is our goal. Now, you wonder if anybody is cashing a dead person's check, shouldn't they go to jail? You should be able to see who is, it's very easy to trace who's been cashing dead relatives' benefits. Problem is there's probably hundreds of thousands of people that might be then going to jail. So, I mean, the fraud could be that widespread. If they're thinking 500 billion, I mean, this is a ridiculous amount of fraud. But in order for you to cash the check, if you have a joint account, I mean, you need to, they should be able to see what account the money goes into and then who is drawing it out. And if the account is a joint account and the person's dead, then you know it's the other person. I mean, it's really easy to trace. But it's frightening that it's taken this long for this to be finally done. And Elon Musk gets credit with Doge. And of course Trump, because he wanted to do this. So the projections are estimating now that there's about $330 million in net benefits that may end under the Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act. Trump signed this law in February saying, Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act. This is where we're at. Other countries are probably looking at us as going, who's been sleeping on the job? They say this new safeguard addresses a longstanding vulnerability and helps ensure every dollar the federal government spends reaches its intended recipient. Treasury will continue efforts to modernize the federal payment system, strengthen safeguards against fraud and improper payments, and protects tax dollars. And, going back to other countries looking at us like we're absolute idiots, to be in this position. If we have somebody, even if it's one citizen, able to defraud the government by a fiscal aspect, then that same potential can also affect our elections, could also affect our health, public health surveillance, could also, extend to our defense. If somebody is sleeping on the job with something as important as money that, our treasury, then what else are they sleeping on the job with? Or is it intentional? And if somebody has the intent within the government to lose money and improperly dispense money, is that intent also going to affect us from a foreign policy standpoint, from a defense standpoint, from a public health standpoint? I mean, this is what's frightening. Anybody who supports the fraud or anybody that is complicit in the fraud is then anti-public health because it's screwing over the individuals who actually need the money. When J.D. Vance found fraud in the SNAP benefits, which, sure, tip of the iceberg. I'm sure there's more. Whoever is doing this fraud is then anti, individuals who need SNAP because you're pulling from funds that they could access. We're being told by RFK Jr. today that over $1 billion in Medicaid payments to California and Minnesota are going to be suspended and paused because of suspected fraud and non-compliance. He said if those states want that money, they need to provide documentations that these payments are legitimate. I agree with him. That's a lot of money. But apparently in Minnesota and California, there's been reports and arrests as it, relates to fraud. And it's what really worries me is what they found is only the tip of the iceberg. And your Medicaid dollars are already few and far between. We really messed up whether it was Biden sleeping on the job, whether it was the government getting. I don't know. I don't know why they would do this, because the Biden administration and the Democrats, even the moderate ones, and moderate Republicans want to make sure we have fundings for social programs. They want to make sure Social Security and Medicare exist. So they need money. But their plan is, well, let's just raise taxes. Just like with colleges. Well, we'll just increase the amount we'll just keep giving the colleges more money. Why isn't somebody looking at the waste, fraud, and abuse? And sadly, I've taught on college campuses, worked, in academia. Gosh, I don't understand why they're paying the staff and professors what they're paying, especially when they're not there. I mean, they're getting a 40-hour-a-week salary and you barely see them. That's waste. Maybe you don't really need all that staff. And again, I don't want to be anti-professor, but when I went to school, the professors were there. There were office hours. Yeah, I remember sometimes, I'd go and they weren't there. But now I hear, because I'm like, well, why don't you go to your professor's office? They're not there. There's waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show, 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So we've seen images and videos of some very significant flooding happening, and the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic are bracing for more severe storms and possible flash flooding. They got hit really hard this weekend. More is on its way. They say the greatest threat, according to ABC News, is a level 3 out of 5 risk. It's going to span from northeastern Kentucky to New Jersey. It'll include Pittsburgh, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, and these thunderstorms may also be bringing wind and tornadoes. There were a lot of tornadoes that hit in Wisconsin and some of the Midwest recently, and they are preparing people that they might see that now with this severe weather threat coming. The level 2 of 5 means damaging wind, large hail, isolated tornadoes. Level 3 of 5 means the wind is going to be destructive. There are going to be tornadoes and large hail. Heavy rain is strong storms are going to move across Ohio Valley through lunchtime into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Areas along the Interstate 95 corridor may get 2 rounds of storms. Flash flooding is going to be a big concern along the I-95. I have an I-95 in my neck of the woods in Nevada. That's not the one. It's the I-95 that goes, I believe, from D.C. to New York City. It's a large one. Flash flood watches have been issued for Delaware to southern New York. They expect the rainfall to exceed about an inch per hour. That could trigger flash flood in urban areas. Philly and New York City are expected to be included. Now, a lot of flights have been canceled, over 1,400 ahead of the storms. New York City and Washington, D.C. are seeing the biggest impacts. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani in between threatening to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, which is absolutely ridiculous. This Mamdani's a real idiot. But he did stop his anti-Israel ranting to urge New Yorkers to exercise caution due to the rain. According to New York City Emergency Management, multiple rounds of rain and thunderstorms are expected across New York City. Strongest storms and greatest severe threat between 6 and 11 p.m. tonight. Expect 1 to 1.75 inches of rain, locally 2 to 3.5 inches. And I know people are like, what? Those are just little bitty inches. What? Yeah, that's not good in urban areas. That's when you get that sort of, it doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot. An inch of rain is a lot. In fact, Mamdani said, if you live in a basement apartment, know your exits and be ready to move to a higher floor if heavy rain begins. If there's thunder, heavy rain, or strong winds, go inside. But if you're in a basement, and a lot of people live in the basement of these apartment complexes, that could be pretty dangerous, especially with flooding. Iowa had some dangerous flooding in Des Moines. 24 cars were stranded on roads. 5 people had to be rescued, according to ABC News. And we're starting to look at the U.S. Gulf Coast with Tropical Storm Bertha. Tropical Storm Bertha, I don't believe expected to be hurricane strength. I think it'll still stay in the tropical storm realm. But it is strengthening near the U.S. Gulf Coast, according to Daily Mail, with a possible potential direct hit on New Orleans. It's the second named Atlantic storm for the 2026 hurricane season. It developed off the coast of Florida around 7 p.m. last night. Forecast models are warning that Bertha will spiral towards Louisiana and Texas over the next day. So tropical storm warnings have already been issued along the coasts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Meteorologists are predicting that Bertha is going to bring dangerous flooding, high winds, and potentially hazardous surf to millions. Now, they're expecting up to 8 inches of rain. Sustained winds of 40 to 60 miles per hour are expected to impact the entire Gulf region. Remember, it has to be about 74 miles per hour to be called a hurricane, but still 40 to 60 miles per hour can be pretty damaging. Florida Panhandle, Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans, and Houston expected to be hit. They say forecasters with AccuWeather believe the tropical storm could make landfall as soon as tomorrow night. Direct hit on the eastern Orleans Parish, including New Orleans East, Lower Ninth Ward, neighborhoods closer to Lake Pontchartrain and Mississippi River's eastern stretches. So we're watching that, and the model does predict, yes, it will hit as it's moving west. National Hurricane Center said a storm surge watch means there's a possibility of life-threatening inundation, the rising water moving inland from the coastline, and the indicated locations during the next 48 hours. We talked a little bit about the predictions this year for the hurricane. We're in July. Hurricane season starts roughly June 1st. They've considered saying it starts maybe mid-May because of some of the tropical storms, the early tropical storms. So it's a good sign that we haven't had only one other named storm, Arthur, until here we are with July 21st. So that's good. that we didn't have multiple storms in June. However, our peak is August, September. And so we're, to me, starting to get into it. Colorado State University researchers did predict a below average hurricane season. Still busy, but below average. They expect 13 named storms. Usually the average is 14.4. 6 of these storms they predict will become hurricanes, 2 major. So all it takes is 1 for us to have a bad season. So even though that's less than average, it's still, could be significant. The most active month is September. And we categorize our hurricanes based on wind speed. So category 1 has to have at least 74 mile per hour wind speed. Category 2, at least 96. Category 3, 111. Category 4, 130 miles per hour. And we call it a category 5 when the wind speeds are over 157. Anything, of category 3 on up can be absolutely devastating. Categories 4 and 5, catastrophic. But even category 1 storms, the tropical storms, can be devastating with the flooding and all that. In any given year, the Atlantic Ocean averages about 12 to 14 named storms. 6 become hurricanes, 3 become major. So that's why we're not a super low quiet season this year, but it's a little less than average. When we talk about the catastrophic damage, I remind you that Hurricane Katrina that happened in 2005 was a category 5 in the Gulf, but by the time it hit landfall, it had already downgraded to a 3. Even though it was a 3 and not a 5, it still killed over 1,800 people, caused over $108 billion in damage, and that was from 21 years ago. Deadliest hurricane ever to hit U.S. soil was the Great Galveston Hurricane in 1900. 10,000 people died, no warning. So the CSU researchers said for this season, they anticipate that the Atlantic Basin hurricane season, this isn't about the Pacific, but the Atlantic, which usually affects us, Pacific, we might get a little bit of it if something hits Mexico and it goes up to California and Arizona, but usually the hurricanes move west. So Hawaii has to, we have to obviously watch but most of the activity that we get comes from the Atlantic Basin. We have weak La Nina conditions transitioning to El Nino in the next few months. Strong El Nino protects us a little bit. Sea surface temperatures in the western tropical Atlantic are warmer than normal, but slightly cooler than normal in the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. They think El Nino is the dominant factor for the upcoming hurricane season, driving increased levels of tropical wind shear. But whenever it is an El Nino, that's when we get a more below average probability. So El Nino is that ocean-atmospheric interaction where sea surface temperatures rise near the equatorial Pacific. They cause increased wind shear in the Atlantic equatorial region, but that's been linked to lower than average hurricane seasons. La Nina, when it's a La Nina year, we're screwed. Those are usually pretty bad, more serious. The Atlantic hurricane names are Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Leah, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. I'm not worried about Hurricane Teddy. That just sounds like Teddy. It'll be Teddy Bear. I'm not worried about that one. Little bit nervous about Dolly. If it stands for Dahlia, that could be a problem. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.